Now, besides mixins as we added them thus far, or as we added it thus far, which is added locally to a component, you can also define global mixins, which affect all components, and not just the components where you explicitly add them. Though, to be honest, global mixins probably have a very limited use case. Now, one use case could be some logging or analytics functionality which you want to add to every component. For example, to know when a component was mounted, anything like that. For that, we could create a logger.js mixin file in the mixins folder, and in there export our mixin object. And in this object, now I don't want to change any data, but instead I'll add the mounted lifecycle hook, which of course can be added to any component, and you can also define it in a mixin. As a side note, if this mixin would be merged with a component which also has a mounted lifecycle hook, both lifecycle hooks would execute, the one in the component and the one in the mixin, with the one from the component being executed last so that it is able to override any changes made by the mixin. But that's just a side note. Here, I'm defining mounted in this mixin, which I want to use as a global mixin, and for the moment, I will just log mounted here. So simply some logging for me as a developer. Maybe you want to store something in some database here, some analytics data, things like that could be done in a global mixin. So here, I'm just logging, and now we can register this as a global mixin by going to our main.js file, where we also define global components and so on. Here we can import the logger mixin from /mixins logger.js, and with that import, it's simply added by calling app mixin. And you probably see a pattern. We had app component for global components, we have app mixin for global mixins. And we simply point at our import here, logger mixin. Now this registers it as a global mixin, and if we now save that, I get my alert here, of course still, but we also now see mounted in the developer tools. And we see that whenever a component is, mounted to the screen, so for example, whenever we open a dialog. And these are global mixins. As I said, probably a very limited use case or a limited number of use cases where they can be useful, but still something to be aware of in case you have some functionality that should be added to every component in your application.